Alright folks, welcome back everyone. It is Monday local time, EST. Another Monday, another reset day. We are in the, I guess, the honeymoon period is over for the module, right? So there's your weekly upkeeps, weekly hauls. Some things are becoming a little bit more trendier now, so going into the honeymoon, like outside the honeymoon period, it appears that the currency that's the rate limiting currency that I was talking about the previous week is whatever is rewarded from the, what is called, the Nexus? No, Necro. So there is a heroic encounter right now called the Necro Titan. It got reworked or something, and then the reward for it has been bumped, and it contains a specific reward that has become the bottleneck of the module. So that's kind of one of the things I had talked about over the last couple days. Regardless if any one particular currency is expedited, I feel like that's either an oversight, or if someone's being very cynical, an intentional way of obscuring, trying to be more player friendly, but at the same time really still not valuing time situation, where inherently, regardless if you only lower one particular currency, if you require 4 or 5 different currency, that includes materials, mats, like materials, tokens, like farming equipment, even like time gate stuff, all of that is based on the bottleneck. So it appears that now what you see is you go in and it's either elemental evils, which is not elemental evil, sorry, endless, I've got what it's called, I think it's short for EE, that event, the group event, internal flame thing, right? It's either that or you hear necro calls, which is addressing the particular bottlenecks. I think oftentimes this stuff would be something that they will probably hear time and time again. They, as in the newly, whatever group leadership is now, or rearrange group leadership. So that's kind of like the ongoing discussion that's in the community. There's another developing thing, which the existing community manager, I'm guessing it's one of the community managers, if not there might be multiple community managers, but the one that is involved in outreach, or not really outreach, that sounds like more of a petty thing, or pity thing, sorry. The outreach is more like the community forward person, the person that's trying to like create an external community, you know, to create word of mouth and situation. There's some initiatives again to try to do that. It's not unprecedented, and it has, in my opinion, not really remarkably sustaining the last 2 or 3 times this has happened. Each and every cycle of new leadership has engaged in some sort of community forward attempt to revitalize outside things. And currently there's this discussion about representation. I think, like, because of how the existing community exists, representation will ever be a detraction from this. Until, in my opinion, it's an uphill battle that they have to address, because their quality of life changes, or their focus on things do not like promote community growth through representation. It promotes community growth through preservation. So preservation means that whatever is preserved now, that representation stays as the majority representation. So every time they're going to release something like, hey, we're doing a community event to celebrate, I don't know, Christmas, for example, then that community event would have detractors because it only represents the people that already exist, all the preservation things. So it would be unwelcoming, technically, or not even inclusive to that. So if I had to predict, the vast majority of things are going to happen in a certain time frame, in a certain region, and it's going to be exclusive to that region. And finding representations for the other regions would come at a risk because generally this game no longer has an adequate representation, largely because it doesn't prioritize community growth or player-based growth more than it has for preserving things. That's neither a good nor a bad thing, because if you can accept that, like if you go into this game, like if someone says, oh yeah, I'm from the Western Hemisphere, or like you're from the NA group or something like that, it is responsible for the community leaders, the representation, to communicate that, oh yeah, let's keep in mind that representation is strongest in a specific region. And creating that allows people to be not upset, so to speak, like not feel like they got bait and swapped, or obligatorily have to rearrange their time for a game that has, let's say, very little investment required. Oftentimes, like, it's a double edge. When you invest in a game and it has a high investment rate, oftentimes people want to get that value back. They are obligated to get that value back. But this game is a live service game, so oftentimes then it welcomes criticism where it's more of a failure to meet expectations and transparency. And then there's some other 2026 like moving forward things statement revealing about, oh, we're gonna try to work on our communication and being more transparent about upcoming things. That's sounds a bit dry politics, so to speak. However, that sounds great. Like, that's what is expected of trying to foster sustainable relationships. With that said, it's going to be tough when you're not in the representative group. And I have a story, or maybe some rhetoric at the end of this session, which is very short. It's like 15 or 20 minute session, to talk about like some gaming news. I have decided that today and then the next 7, 8, 9, 10, the next 4 streams will like start with some commentary about what's happening with Neverwinter, maybe some rumors in the Vine or some official announcements, and then we'll end with some anecdotes and stuff, just things to talk about and think about, because that's what I feel is reflective of what live service is to me. I play live service games, not necessarily the idea of being my mind blown all the time or the next greatest thing since sliced bread. Live service games are where, in my opinion, embodies the idea of legacy building, preservation, right? Preservation and conservation, which is a natural part of live service, and as well as an idea of keeping up to date on steady growth as opposed to elitism and being exclusive, consistently more and more exclusive. So we'll talk about something like that later. So now we're gonna hop in. We're only doing one character this time around because module is not, there really isn't much to the module that would cater to repeating more than one character. It's already illustrated in the bottleneck in form of the currency. So ultimately, it's far more encouraging to to do it with one character, and then maybe like if this game is still around for 2 years or something, buy the currency or something like that. At least that's how I would go about it. Let's go to our, oh man, I clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, let's go here. It should be no more than 20 minutes. I don't expect anything to be out of the ordinary for the next 4 weeks, including this week. So we go here, grab our weekly. Right, here's our 1 weekly. We're only doing Valora because she's the quickest. Oh, we actually landed on the RTQ for this thing. Does this give you anything? Oh, it gives you 5 things. That's nice. And then our weekly from previous day, 25. And then this is the activity refresh, right? Which doesn't really do anything other than fill itself out. So we just broke that off. And then we display this. Oh, it's called the Endless Experiment, the E Endless Experiment. E also happens to be Elemental Evils, which is like a prominent chapter in D&D. So why is this okay? So we got 25. Let's go and grab the other 25. This is how I go about my weeklies, and if I was going to do it on 2 more characters, I'm like basically weaning off unless something dramatically changes. I'm weaning off of doing 3 characters. There is a chance that this will change in the next half module 32.5, because they've been collecting feedback. Another thing that's happening right now is they've been collecting feedback on tanks, on the tanks, tanking in general. So that involves every 3 characters I have. So that might change. It might be really fun to go back and do this module on the other 2 characters if something dramatically changes for the 3 tanks, which is on the chopping block. I mean, Barbarian in general is back again on the editing block. Again, all of this is incredibly dependent on the existing preservation group's opinions. So usually that means that it's not a design point that comes with the idea of refreshing and innovating, more like refining and iterating, which is not something that I find as attractive, right? Because I typically am excited about when people start over, when people start new things. That's refreshing, and it can create community growth or chance community growth based on different directions. Getting feedback on these things usually does not present more new directions. It in this community, in my opinion, this community tends to try to refine and consistently navigate, trying to make things better for themselves. That's like, oh, I don't like this thing, why can't it be changed in a way that I want to play it like I've always played it, as opposed to more like changing things for the sake of novelty, right? Like revamping things and whatnot. That's not the case here. This game is, and it's for both its strength and its double edge, the design language and the philosophy of the existing community is reflective in how long the game has been around. It's been around for more than 12 years, and naturally so, you become, humans are naturally going to be attached to that and trying to maintain whatever it is that they find enjoyable. It's also reflexive in the type of people that like come by and share their ad hominem arguments against me about like, oh, people who play this game, all they do is pine for all the good old days, and you're never gonna have those good old days. That's kind of a reflection of old things. Neverwinter, especially Dungeons and Dragons, is characteristic of preservation, things of the old. And I don't play Neverwinter and other games in live service for that reason. I play because it's an ever-growing process. I tend to be excited and expectant that things change over time, not to go back to the previous thing. Oh, hey, there's more Wigglies here. Wait, relive. Which one is this? Oh, do we get to relive the? Oh, okay. So we don't have to do dailies at all. We can do the fun stuff. Oh, that's nice. I could get another a shot of this. Is this the really fun things? Hold up. I think these are the really fun things. Okay, that's a pleasant surprise. Let's see. The changing room. Where's the changing room? Okay. So good. That's cool. Last week, I really enjoyed the solo thing. Well, I'll talk about more about the solo thing in a bit. I think the player base and expectations have been changing dramatically. I'm not entirely sure if Dika is going to get Dika and Cryptic is going to get the same memo from an inherently preservational community. So more on that after we finish these. Oh yeah, you get to do this again. Oh, I really like this thing. You get to do both of them again. So you grab let's see if I. So you grab the amulet, right? Then you go here. Oh, and you can mount here. I didn't even realize you can mount here. Oh, did I? You check the door, and the door is like, nah, we need some sacrifices. So now we have to go and do those things. I wonder if you can do them in different order. So this one will take you to the succubi. Or succubus, sorry. Just one succubus. No, we do need to interact with this. Okay. Alright. And then we need to collect stuff from these guys, so we need to grab the quest from here. Right. They need ingredients to free them from the cage. And now we go and do all the different color things. And as well as the bugs, so we can lead the bugs. It's bugs, ingredients, and then rescue the peepos. We can do this while we're going about it. Come on, little guys. I don't know if you have to wait on them or not. Let's see. I guess as long as you trigger this. The doors, though. The lighting in this area is great. Alright. So the question is this 25? It's not. Like, it takes much longer than getting 25. I think. Maybe it might be reasonably if you can get down your pathing. Curious if they modify the thing at all. There are traps. Just hop. Hop, hop, hop. Hop, hop, hop. Okay. Alright. That's one. Need to go to the red room. I don't quite remember which way we're heading here. Okay, so we go from here and then go downstairs, right? There should be a blood room somewhere. There it is. Temple of Blood. Gargoyles attack us. Right. All three of them are range. Okay. So we grab these. Yeah, no, I think doing the dailies is faster. Probably. Like, you can do 3 cycles faster than one of these. It's kind of fun doing. We can try to optimize it. And then the beholders. Yeah, it leads into the beholders. That's good. So that pathing is pretty decent. You don't have to attack the beholders. They're right out of range. Okay. And then now we have to rescue the guys. I don't actually know where they are. So go through here, right? There's supposed to be guys somewhere. Oh, here it is. Okay, so you run through. Okay. And you bop him really, really quick. Okay. And this should lead back up through to the main chamber. And we're good. It's okay. It's about the same speed, I suppose. It's definitely not faster. Wait, what's happening? Why? What? Oh, wait, what? What else am I missing? Oh yeah, I forgot to turn in. I have to go back up and then return the ingredients. Forgot about that. Oh. Okay. Should be good. Wait. Oh. Oh, did they change this? I thought it was the second one. Maybe they changed. It's a random order. Alright. So now we go back. The peeps. Definitely longer. At the moment. Because then we have to take these guys out. Do all these engage or no? They come in waves. There. Oh, it's these things. Oh, wait, no. Okay. Yeah. Now we have to take out all of them. Alright. Yeah, we take out these guys. These buttheads. Who experimented on the fake Esser, right? Transforms. We bop it, the Tesser. And then we're good. The changing room thing is pretty long too, but it is quite fun. Really cool room. All right. Now we go up here, grab the other one, and we're actually done. This one was a cool mission. Very cool. Curious if they expedite any part of it. Yep. Get to do both of them. Cool. Right. Hello, guys. Good talk. Things like disappearing and coming and going, it's pretty fantastic. Like illusionary walls and all that. Ah, dude. Like you got bopped on it. There was actually an invisible clipping there. I don't have to go over there, right? Ew. I wonder if you can. No. Okay. And then that introduces like the wall mechanic. Oh, I don't think you do. Okay. No, you're fine. We can just go. What? What? Am I confused? What? I don't recall. Oh no. We can just hop around, so let's. You just hop and then. Did we just hop and then go for it? Oh no. That's right. The invisible stairs. That's right. So then, can we apply the usual thing here? Basically, we apply... No. Do we? Are all ones? No. Okay. Curious. I can't see. Okay, so these walls stay open. Okay. That's not too... Okay. That's not too bad. It's a really long sequence. It is a really cool location. That... Alright. More echoes. Friendly. Okay. Now we do the invisible stuff. Oh no. It's a little further up. Okay. This is a pretty good, great spot too. Hi guys. What? And then now we have the trusting the fall. But it's really, you pick the ones that... You pick the ones that are not initially... Can I grab that? Oh no, I can't. That's scary as how far it goes. Alright, I'm having parkour issues. You got no ups. I tell you, no ups. I think this one was okay. They just pick the ones that have no bottoms yet. Might be a coincidence, you know. That is awkward interaction. Holy, that was an awkward interaction. Well, there you go. It's kind of curious. Yeah, animation delay though. No traps here. Oh my gosh. Staircase difficulties. Okay. I think this one isn't that bad either. They're about equivalent. I think they're about the same speed if you go back twice, 2.5 times. Well, it looks like E farming. People are talking about E farming. One quick run before you get to work. You still need 2,500 research tokens. Interesting. There's a bunch of chatter. Alright. So that's it. Right? They should be 25 each. So that means, yep. Let's yoink this. Oh yeah, these are the dusts that you also have to collect. Oh, my bag is like, I haven't cleaned out my bag in time. Anyways, yeah, pretty quick. So you're guaranteed to get the 75, right? Which, personally, I think that's quite enjoyable. We can throw in a run. We can throw in a RTQ to see if we see the normal soul harvest by chance. Right, there we go. Usually there's a fairly good chance. I'm not sure if they increase the odds of doing it during opening campaign window. I guess we'll find out. I do randoms. We queue solo unless it just doesn't pop or anything. Usually around this time you will have little to no activity because of the time zone. Oh, there we go. We got our harvest, soul harvest thing. Here it is. Take it in all its glory, right? I shouldn't have skipped the beginning. But there we go. It's kind of quaint. How do I... Yeah, it looks pretty neat. The maze, I'm guessing the maze is over there, which is visible. Yeah. It's a pretty, like, it looks really, like, in action, it looks pretty cool for the most part. Yeah, sure. So we have the, like, the 3 biomes, right? The ice biome, the fire, and then the Fae, sort of. And in normal, this is what I mean by I disagree with their like approach. They segregate those who do things casually versus those who do things for group events. So there isn't a bridge for that. So for this, you just sit here and avoid the same mechanics that you've seen before. And the novel mechanics are often consistently excluded from the normal, really, most of the time. Which creates its own like conveniences and lack of bridging. This is to demonstrate how quote unquote engaging it is from the perspective of using normal stuff. Someone's using a hard taunt. The other person's using a hard taunt. And just standing in the middle of the group. Yeah, usually whatever that person just did would wipe out half the group. If it was, you know, not normal. This gate is like really weird most of the time. Like you can barely interact with it. And a lot of things keep you in combat. Like I still can't get out of combat. The guys look cool though. I imagine those pillars, right? Those pillars in this field, I didn't see it. I wasn't paying attention that much to the other things, but I'm pretty sure the pillars are part of something. Oh no. Usually you don't place like random pillars like this that are solid without trying to break line of sight or intercept something. Maybe it's the frost mechanic from Bandbreaker times. Like that particular thing. Yeah, I don't think it's actually in normal. Most things are not in normal. Then we go to the third. Usually you're not like, groups are not technically together most of the time, or like half the time, I suppose. There are many phases in which the group is either separated or parts of particular group members are separated in this. That's not in normal, so. Oh, that was my bad. And then they included the mad dash across the bridge. I don't think. Oh, there is a player requirement, even for normal. I think it's 5. Yeah, the guy using hard hunt can't crowd control. But we'll just crowd control. No, can't generate threat either. Hmm? Alright, now we do the mad dash across the bridge, and in normal, you just mad dash the bridge and hope that I think it's 5 people. You need 5 people to make it to the end. So we hit our tab and hope to grab as many peeps away before we die. because I don't expect any support. And then I'll probably use a scroll. An opportune moment, because I don't expect support, even though there's a tank right there who basically has zero pressure. And then that's it. Save us. Okay. That's it. The end. I believe they added like a chest here so that it doesn't get confusing. And then some extra rule, like that chest was added later on to be like to address some of the criticisms about the loot. So it was like filtered down from masters. That's it. That's the normal version. The advanced version is a little bit more involved and dare I say interesting with the maze, right? The maze, the splitting. The tanks and healers have to find their souls, and then they have to coordinate with the DPS to grab the souls. Edicts are much more numerous and powerful. The edicts from Zastam. And yeah, good that we managed to capture some footage of the new trial. So that kind of, I guess we could throw in a RTQ. No, RTQ. All right, so we've come to the end, right? It's 10:37 local time, so we can talk about a few things. I think one interesting topic that came across my mind recently. The last couple of days, we were talking about taking existing examples from other live service games, not live service games that don't exist anymore or exist in the condition that they used to be, right? That was the debacle, at least in my opinion, the criticism or someone projecting onto me about pining for the past. I don't want to turn this back into World of Warcraft or RuneScape or whatnot. I think that time is past. It's great to be nostalgic about things in the past, but I think things in the present and the future are evolutions of that. So living the past makes one not be able to enjoy what's in front of you and what's painting in the future. So a little touch upon the last 3 streams. Now, during that time, there are other existing games brought up, right? Last week, I brought up the idea that there are live service games that are in different genre, but they are considered MMOs, right? And MMOs have this loose definition, a looser definition nowadays because of changing cultural aspects of gaming, which is the idea that an MMO revolves around the necessity and or the involvement, whether it's direct or indirect, of consistently being exposed to strangers, right? Whether it's their data, their ghost, or literally interacting with them. That would be considered, in my opinion, the scape of MMOs. That's what massive multiplayer online now includes. You either indirectly participate with a ghost of another player because that's their data. Like, for example, a leaderboard. If you're competing with someone in a leaderboard, that involves a greater communal interaction. Like speedrunning has a speedrunning community. And even in the speedrunning community, they have sub-communities of each speedrunning group. FGC, very similar. Street Fighter, Tekken, what have you, right? Choose your poison. And that constitutes as the greater landscape of MMOs. And that's kind of what sort of earlier when I was mentioning about the communal outreach, so to speak, or expansion. The world is not the same anymore. Society is not the same anymore in ways that very much makes things that you pine for back in nostalgia times no longer relevant, in my opinion. And those who go around projecting negativity, like as though everyone else desires what they desire, living in the past, stuck in their own ways, and trying to constantly relive it, that is definitely something that was a misunderstanding. So for now, last week I mentioned Arc Raiders. In Arc Raiders, the developers were able to create an environment in which you had the option of being uncooperative and individualized and being greedy. But Arc Raiders developer were able to pull off an MMO. It's not an RPG, but it's an MMO. It's actually kind of an RPG. The mechanics of interacting, like shooting and looting, it's a looter shooter. I mean, it's not a looter shooter. It's an extraction shooter. Extraction shooters are still MMOs. And in a way, their role-playing involves role-playing the role that you are given. It's kind of like EVE Online being considered a role-playing. You have a role that you decide to designate yourself in the greater landscape of EVE Online, right? So in EVE Online, you have all those examples, and EVE Online is still going, where there are selfish players who want to play that role. You know, it's an MMO. And then there are cooperative players. Well, Arc Raiders is this year, it's still 2025 after all, was able to create a design that promotes cooperativity and incentivizes cooperativity than PvP. So it is very much possible. Again, this is an exceptional case. We'll see if the future holds more examples like Arc Raiders, but it's a potential. It shows a precedence for being able to offer both PvP and PvE or PvEVP options and still able to incentivize the idea of cooperative play. And how does this relate to Neverwinter? Neverwinter is trying to, in my opinion, on the surface, like a surface level, encourage that. Their preservation design is trying to encourage the end game to be cooperative. However, their design, in my opinion, clashes with their monetary, monetary resource business building philosophy with maintaining campaign stuff. So the campaigning part is the PvE section. We call that the PvE section, in my opinion. And then there's the solo PvE section. Then we have the multi PvE section, which you can see it blend in, like heroic encounters, world, quote unquote, world events. World events are cooperative leaned, but the cooperative lean must be incentivized with currency. So that's what they're doing now. Endless evil, I forgot what it's called again. Endless experiment, the necro titan farm, those are incentivizing cooperative play in a PvE structure, right? And then they're hoping, in my opinion, by design, that it would lead to the cooperative nature in trials and dungeons. So the goal is to try to incentivize cooperative play. However, cooperative play comes in many forms. An MMO has preservationist and elitism cooperation versus random obligations and queuing and matching, right? And Neverwinter has kind of, regardless of how much they filtered this random queuing system, right, this matching system, to enforce maybe like a chance that people would cooperatively, non-discriminatorily cooperate with each other. It didn't work. Like, in my opinion, it gloriously works for like 10%. The vast majority arrange. So you have two conflicting things. You have the conflict of trying to incentivize a global communal feel versus an elitism self-selected field. And the self-selection is the conservationist. So when you're taking a conservationist approach, making your trials more difficult, your dungeons more difficult, enriches and incentivizes elitism and conservationism, not growth and inclusivity, right? And those are at odds with each other. And it's definitely up to whoever is paying for this, right? Like those who support this game, whoever is the majority, it represents the majority. The majority are conservationists. They are preservationists and conservationists, where they want more challenges and tackle the skills of cooperative play, but not in the sense of adapting to human experiences. They are keeping the same groups, similar groups. They are pre-selecting. So all of the group activities require pre-selection that is outside the world events. In the grand scheme of live service, I was gonna bring in another title. This year was when Where Wind Meets, right? Where Wind Meets, which is a Chinese, or is it Korean? I think it's Chinese. Let me double check. Where Wind Meets has a really interesting, funny story recently, so I was gonna bring that up. It's NetEase, yeah, it's NetEase Games. So NetEase is a massive publisher now, and one of the ones that they develop and publish, NetEase Games, published and developed was Marvel Rivals recently, right? So competitively, but NetEase also publishes a lot of other games as a distributor, and Everstone Studios already released Where Winds Meet back like a year ago overseas, and now it was recently released in November 14th, 2015, this year, on the global side of things. And they took a different approach to quote-unquote MMORPGs, right? And that is to create a emphasis on interactivity in world events, like world happenings. I saw a really funny video of watching players be punished for committing crimes, and those players are visibly punished in the landscape of everyone else, right? Like, for example, here you really can't see what's going on with anyone at any one time. Like, there are no events or interactions in which there is anything outside of vanity, right? Like that guy running around on the goose, that's vanity, right? It's not a core community building thing. So there was an interesting story as well, that Where Wind Meets is experimenting with how to scale their environment to be more reactive. And for better or for worse, it was quite an interesting result. I think just this week, or maybe the previous week, they introduced NPCs that were powered by AI. So, like, you know, I would go up to this guy, and the quest givers and stuff, the AI would respond to you, right? It would be like a ChatGPT situation. They use maybe a nearest neighbor model or predetermined routes and stuff. And while you might think, oh yeah, AI models, they suck at conversations, like, yeah, they do suck at conversations. So like, next to a script writer or a voice actor, for example, like a script writer in terms of acting is involved, it might be very organic. However, the results were not quite as one might think. You might think like, oh yeah, it's going to be like a mind's eye situation. It's all garbage and it sucks and it's lifeless. In fact, what I found very humorous about this is it's another product that is dynamically interactable in the environment, like in the solo scape of things, to create reactivity. So what the humorous things is, well, AI is kind of borked, right? So what they found was people developed this really funny bug, or like this emergent hallucinogenic problem. Apparently when you talk to AI and they ask you to do a task, right? Like, please go fetch the grain. And if you reply, they call this, like, it's funny because they already dubbed this the solid snake method. Basically, solid snake, it's a common meme that I wondered about Japanese, like Japanese translations all the time, like when they translate to English, where you have this habit of when someone says, go get the grain, Solid Snake has this like very characteristic reply where he says the thing back in the same phrase but in a different tone, and that kind of borks the AI apparently and causes the AI to think that you finished the quest. So like, hey, go get the grain. Go get the grain is what, like, as a question and back. So hear me out. Yes, it's janky and it's like lifeless or something, but what is happening is it creates a form of interaction, a dynamic that the entire community discovered. It's an emergent property. So to me, right now, Neverwinter does not do that for community building, and it's not a focus of theirs. They are trying to, in my opinion, focus on catering to conservationists and preservationists, so that experience is tailored to them. It's not emergent, because emergent means that you're not preserving or conserving what you know and what you like to know. Usually emergent means introducing variables and wild things or changes that causes new things to happen. So when you're constantly developing based on feedback, especially feedback of an aging population that is trying to stick to nostalgia and holding on to whatever that they like instead of developing new interest, right? Being challenged to develop new ways of playing, or being forced to adjust and abandon old ways of playing, that would not preventing that or mitigating that would not lead to new emergent properties. Where It Meets Win got viral, and for all the funny reasons or interesting reasons, because they tried something and it's often vehemently originally looked at as a negative thing, but it ended up being a funny thing and an entertaining thing. That is what I mean by taking risks in a creative way that creates a larger community or expands a larger community. Neverwinter is not doing that, in my opinion, and they understand the pros and cons. At least I feel that the company, the group, and the people who are still playing this game, who are vocal about their thing, they understand the pros and cons. There are no transformative emergent experiences if you're taking feedback from people who've played this game for a very long time and continue to pine and maintain the same things. And that is the exchange. The exchange, the pro is it's consistent, it's iterative, and it's safe, right? So I use Where Wind Meets. I didn't play it myself. I watched other people play. The idea is that is stirring the pot. They are doing things, whether it is disagreeable or agreeable, whether it's janky or not. When they follow through, there's a lot of experimentation. And oftentimes it's a risk, but different players can lead to new communal gatherings. Neverwinter is very consistent. It's super consistent. So if you want a consistent experience of, hey, what is it like to form a clique and stick with your clique and always hang out with the same buddies and constantly reinforce everything that you know and love, Neverwinter's for you. It's really excellent in that way. I only do the parts that are not inconsistent. Like the campaigning part is supposed to be the non-consistent part. So I only talk about the non-consistent things, the different things, the chance of change. Unlike the person who was accusing me that I sit here and hope that the second coming of World of Warcraft or something would come out. I rarely ever hope that. Like I'm gonna not know, like, this is my opinion, not other people's opinion. I don't get up thinking, oh man, I wish I can relive my old life. Like, no, I don't. I love what all my previous experiences have led up to this moment. But when I wake up, I want to see news about, hey guys, we're going to try something really different. We're going to remove trials and dungeons from Neverwinter and decide that the next module is only solo campaign related things. That would be wild. I would be on board on that because it's wild. It creates dissonance. It causes people to challenge themselves to be excited about playing things different again instead of maintaining the same thing. Live service does play into that though. That is why live service is very consistent. It's habit forming, it's consistent, and there's no come and go. When you invest in something, it builds over time. So that's kind of a conflicting issue. Now, on that note, the flip side, while where Wind meets is trying different things and Arc Raiders is swapping up the things, there are examples of turning tides for live service things. So live service games that are effectively still MMOs, by the general definition that I use, there are examples of that too, where it's about consistency and iterating and constantly building on the same iteration while trying to mitigate vertical progression, right? Vertical progression is when all the stuff you're doing, the previous thing you did, it's irrelevant now. All the current things are the current thing that's relevant, and everything in the future will be more relevant than the current thing. That is not the trend here. But Neverwinter is designed like that is the trend. To keep people playing is to make the previous thing irrelevant. They keep upping the challenge. They keep upping the new currencies. They keep replacing the old stuff. It's not cumulative. It's not legacy dependent. And that becomes harder and harder in my opinion over time because the current trend doesn't support that. It's largely about collecting horizontally now, and that is the current trend, which may or may not be something that they're considering. Like, for example, Persona 5, the Phantom X, is not an MMO in which you have to directly cooperatively play again, like together. Like, it's not like 5e, right? Like 5 players meeting an environment. It's more like every individual is collectively contributing to a bigger cause, and then they're competing indirectly based on their metrics, which are like their ghosts, right? That is the trend now. That's a big trend for live service models when it comes to overall happiness, when it comes to PvE without the VP, without the direct VP, or PvE in a sense of a non-competitive pack or friendly scholarly sportsmanship between people who PvE. So the question in those games, it's often more like who can PvE harder or better or tweak out more, like tweak your stuff more than the next person. It's not directly competitive as in, oh yeah, you're only this good because you have a competitive edge because you have friends that are more dedicated or you're more dedicated. It's less alienating. It's about boosting the overall communal share in tips and stuff. I don't think this is the case in Neverwinter. It's kind of a mixed breed here, because on the one hand you might have that within the groups, but all those groups are gatekept. They are very noticeably gatekept, because they are not incentivized to open the gates. You don't need to open the gates in order to do things. But Persona 5, for example, when you're collecting things, despite it being a gacha game, right? Despite being a gacha game, playing the game increases your collection It increases your value. You don't get that in Neverwinter. Your value is as current as the current clique and country club that you're paying a subscription to. Not necessarily a subscription in the same as money. It's subscription in the sake of time. So there's a dependency and requirement to be current in order to even have colleagues. So in my opinion, it's more like a collection of businessmen than it is a collection of let's just have fun together, right? And that mastering, like creating more and more quote unquote difficult content, that enhances gatekeeping. That is a benefit to a game too. It makes your game challenging, and it makes it different too. Neverwinter is different in this regard. Now, is it different? Do the people who play this game know that it is different in a way that it draws the most criticism? You could call it pride, like you can be prideful in playing a game that still values difficulty and which inherently is gatekeeping for accolades. That's great. You can go around and boast about that. However, it would be also very responsible and adult-like and polite to understand that most people will be against you when you're being different. The current trend is that when people play live service games, they're constantly, quote unquote, becoming more valuable horizontally. The stuff that they collect do not get phased out, or they try to minimize phasing out all the things. You build horizontally. So in you still get power creep in Persona. Like for P5X, you get power creep because regardless of how much you build horizontally, some characters will overlap with the purpose of another character. So they continue to construct more challenging and more elaborate things that make use of across your entire collection, right? This does not. You're constantly replacing and rotating out your new things. So in every stretch of the imagination, if you don't stay in the country club, you fail to want to stay with this game, right? Like this stuff, all of this stuff is out of date. Inherently, it's just out of date. The way the game is designed is to roll over all your stuff, and that's how you keep the conservationists consistently playing. They're consistently playing the same iterative design in order to stay current, right? It's a time-tested way to roll around. World of Warcraft does it still, right? Like other games do. The competing games that are carving out different niches is not that, like MiHoYo stuff that we mentioned previously. There's another one. There's another piece of gaming news that I was going to share about this. Oh, the trend in... So I know most people wouldn't consider MMOs in terms of like competitive shooters. Competitive shooters are MMOs. You are consistently always interacting with teammates and playing against other teammates. MMOs don't all have to be cooperative, right? Or competitively cooperative. So non-competitive cooperative, we already talked about that. Like gacha games, MiHoYo games, they are non-competitively cooperative in the sense that they are far from competitive cooperative nature, which can be extraction shooters, right? We also have the competitive MMOs, which the one that I want to highlight recently this year was Black Ops 7. Now, Black Ops 7, all the stuff that they did was well in its competitive space. So like the PvP stuff, like, oh yeah, that's Black Ops, they checked all the boxes, that's great. And yet Black Ops 7 is conservatively, again, there are people who like it, but conservatively, I would say 8 out of 10 people did not like that game. Did not like Black Ops 7. And you might be thinking, like a lot of people say, oh yeah, it's because, you know, the Black Ops 6 flopped, and then they try to milk it some more, and people are down with companies. Actually, the most common, and this is, again, take it with a grain of salt, this is collecting sources of sources. So when I listen to commentary and op-eds and whatnot, I collect like 7 or 8 different summaries of other people's summaries. So technically, if they all have the same source, this is a grain of salt, right? So the disclaimer. However, the trend still aligns with all the converging evidence that I would support for the current live service MMOs, which is the idea that the main complaint about Black Ops 7, which is now officially the worst performing Black Ops game ever, which you might not see them as a live service, but they do. It's a live service with microtransactions, and they do even annual biannual refresh, with the exception of this year because there was 2 Black Ops titles. That qualifies in the same realm of design choices that Neverwinter Online has to take. And the main complaint, sorry, really long preface. The main complaint is that the single player, the PvE content was garbage. So, despite having the tried and true, mundane, run-of-the-mill, check the box, being consistent, iterative design, all of that worked really well of the PvP thing, or the even the cooperative stuff. Like, Neverwinter is PvE competitive PvE design for the end game, right? If they continue to do that, that's great. But overall, the thing that drags a trend that it's missing, in my opinion, is understanding that live service functions in a PvE environment. Most definitely now. It might not have been true before. Like, for example, if we rewind it back 5 years or 10 years, you could say, oh yeah, nostalgia and all that stuff was still strong, and you want to keep hanging on to the nostalgia, which again, I'm a little biased against. You could say, oh, but it's always worked this way. Neverwinter has been around for 12 years, and it's always been making dungeons and trials more competitively PvE, like PvE competitive, and people like it. It's like, well, yes, those people continue to like it, and they are happy to stay in the past. They are happy to iterate on existing things. The current trend, the new trend in the last 5 to 10 years, is that single player campaign is what creates the optics and the growth of a game. Like, you can have all of the other things still exist, and the thing that destroys the game's reputation is the inability to understand that nowadays people are connected in many different ways, and having an independent thing to encourage them to play the game is reliant on the single player experience. So inherently, you might be thinking, okay, well, Neverwinter is just different, right? And what is your evidence that this is the case? Or what if Neverwinter can prove it wrong? Well, it can still go on and do all of that. Right now, though, most of that evidence is stacked against Neverwinter. The vast majority of people have competitive PvE stuff as a secondary to the legacy building of single player games. So if one was collecting feedback, if they had an in-house optics planner or a project planner, or even a director that's inclined to make money, like, we could even make a cynical argument for money making. Well, this, in a way, I actually kind of appreciate that they're sticking to their guns if that's what they're intentionally doing. But if they're talking about, like, if you're making an argument like, oh yeah, but this is just, they don't care about your time, it's publishers trying to force the developers to keep you playing, well, someone is kind of left out of the loop, in my opinion, because the evidence would suggest that you abandon trials and dungeons, you abandon making competitive PvE content, and you make non-competitive PvE content, single player PvE content, to grow your game and grow your player base at the cost of nostalgia and conservationists, because overall it will give the people a valuation of their time. It's ironic because that guy was suggesting that going back to a past time, in that nostalgia would increase the value of your time. I think now in the contemporary space, there's no greater time and desire for value of one's time, and that's not coming from pining about World of Warcraft and pining about when back in the day it took 60 hours to gain one level. Now it's about horizontal integration, building your homestead, creating memories within yourself, and then being able to show that off to other people, right? The single player experience. And with healthy single player experience, there are healthy gamers, or you would think healthy mental people, who are willing to interact and create a community with a greater space. It's that's another approach, and it's the more trendy approach at the moment. You have players who like to be in your game because there are single player elements that makes them want to be in your game. That creates serendipity. That serendipity chance that your game creates a community because everyone wants to be in it. So it's back to the chicken or the egg question now. Is it too late for a game to change their direction where it's not about gatekeeping, but it's more like keeping the gate open and producing more inhabitants? And the inhabitants then would trigger random participation that grows once again into another community within the existing community. Don't know. It would be interesting to see what they do next. Most games grow in a different way now, and pining for the past means that you go against the trend. So the great wonder of the years to come is that, is bucking against a trend going to create a new trend? Conservatively, I would say I don't think the current direction of Neverwinter is going to buck at the trend that is so much larger at the moment. It could maybe far down the future when people start to pine about being PvE competitive again, or even PvP for that matter, because Arc Raiders clearly didn't take that route. Black Ops continued to take that route, and it was very clear that if you give a Black Ops 7 to someone, 8 out of those 10 people say, wow, the campaign is garbage. What happened? Where did all the money go? Right? So, in a way, when you think about it here, it's like, wow, that's a new module. Oh, wait. The end game is catered to a competitive PvE gate-kept environment. Where did all the rest of the game go? And for the record, I absolutely loved the campaign. This module is fantastic. It's a and then there's that lingering disappointment from all the trends, like why wasn't there more of it? Like what happened? Like would it be like devastating to one's philosophy and one's own pride and hubris that they sacrifice a trial period or a dungeon period to enhance the solo content? Don't know. Like, I think there's a cognitive dissonance of trying to create an MMO by not prioritizing your campaign regions, your serendipity world building situations. Genshin is as big as it is without even having literal people interacting with each other in the game, because people want to be in the game anyways. Fortnite, still, this is a competitive process, but They prioritize the connectiveness, which makes for a really funny announcement because I just saw that Kim Kardashian is being added in the Fortnite. That's what I mean, the greater community thing. I think nowadays, as much as you pine for nostalgia, which I was accused of, I don't pine for nostalgia, honestly. I like to see what people want now, and what people want is really to create a greater community by serendipity. Basically, if you're able to get someone to be interested in staying in your product or your game, that community then gets built from that. Earlier today, I was doing my usual things and I'm no longer doing Duolingo, right? And then someone stops by from a while side. It's like, oh yeah, I'm still just Duolingoing. It's like, yeah, because Duolingo has a greater community and a consistent community, whether they know it or not, in a way that's built on the solo experience that keeps them in the system in order to form new communal strategies. So that goes back to where win meets. Despite a very disagreeable, controversial addition to the game, there was enough sufficient community members who play the game because of that environment and interacting that created something funny and viral out of it. If you want other examples that aren't MMOs, but technically they are now MMOs because we're talking about augmented community building, right? Communities are larger than the game itself. It breaks the fourth wall most of the time. What's a great example? Elder Scroll. Not ESO, not Elder Scroll Online. I'm talking about things like Skyrim and the recent Oblivion remastered. Like, those aren't MMOs by design, but they are most certainly MMOs by consequence. So that is a grand example of related products that presented forward the solo experience, because the internet society is a little different now. It's built on individuals. Forcing cooperative play and forcing gatekeeping instead of promoting serendipitous common interest is behaviorally, at least in my opinion, behaviorally short-sighted. That's probably why you get comments like, "Oh, hey, I'm gonna project my behavior because I want something that I don't really want." At least that's what I hear a lot of times, where someone would say, "Oh, I want competitive PvE environment games." Meanwhile, once you get that, they would say, "Oh, well, you should make this easy enough so a lot of people can beat the game so they can join me and play and stop whining while I can beat hard games and be rewarded for it." That's kind of the cyclic argument that's happening now, right? How you choose to interpret that is interesting. I think that right now, the large, substantial number of live service games who are considered MMOs, they are built on a foundation that when the player base is satisfied with the live service part, as in the content related part that keeps them engaged in it, they usually end up forming chance communities within that, and that creates solidarity. So yeah, Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact would be a great example. Then we have like still Lord of Rings Online. I imagine D&D Online is still going. Old school RuneScape. World of Warcraft still works in that capacity to some extent, despite not being the most ideal example of it anymore. Guild Wars still does that, and they're not even subscription based. It's a one-time purchase, right? Azure Creations is starting up. It's starting up. It starts with negativity and content concerns and whatnot, but that doesn't stop the community to defend it. which is interesting. I think keeping an eye on Ash's creation and how they go about it would be I feel like it's a No Man's Sky situation that that sort of tangentially revolves around MMOs. No Man's Sky is not an MMO, and yet it's a really huge community. Stardew Valley is not an MMO, and it's still built horizontally to support massive multi-playing online experience, right? Like Stardew Valley is a great example where yeah, you can play with 4 players, and it's connected in a greater audience all the time and dynamically. Don't Starve, for example, way like if you're arguing, if someone argues, oh, but these MMOs need great budgets, they're gigantic and they need not really, and they existed almost like arguably just as long nowadays as Neverwinter has, right? And I'm curious where this is gonna go. I'm still looking forward to whatever they're doing, especially when rebalancing or iterating or changing. I usually think of when someone says rebalancing or feedback, my fingers are crossed on changes. And changes are what I play live service games for, not maintaining the same vertical progression. Like when the next Persona 5 update, right? The next Persona 5 Phantom X update, I'm expecting that it is a horizontal progression. And it's a vertical progression for story, but story is different. It's technically more horizontal than it is vertical, because story builds on its sub in a vertical sense, but you can't have the story progress without having everything else. Everything else has value based on its current story, and then everything else is horizontal progression. You're never replacing something. You're not there to say, oh, the next patch is going to replace and make the other things that I've done obsolete. That's the old school way. That's still, I guess, to some extent, Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft. Warframe doesn't do that, obviously. Warframe prioritizes the single player experience and collection to forward their community investments. Maybe they'll do something like that in the future, but my hot take, like, here's a fun little hot take for experiment. Single player dungeons. Next module, or next half module, a single player dungeon. And that single player dungeon comes with all the fun little indirect scholarly competition between the single players, right? Like a single player dungeon with a workable leaderboard. Like, they tried the leaderboard last time. They did a slaughterhouse thing where, like, it's a PvE VP. So they did the PvE section and then it's coupled indirectly with the PvP section. And then they talked about the act of putting up a leaderboard and whatnot. That's still competitive PvE and PvP mentality. So whatever group you have, the more experienced they are, the more they're going to bicker about it and the finer differences. What happens when it's individualized, right? It'll be interesting if that's what they're going to experiment next, because genuinely, the individual really does come first a lot of times now. Not that it's a good or bad thing. I've already highlighted in language learning and problem solving, critical thinking skills, as well as like communication and whatnot, building relations have become very difficult. So it's acknowledging that there are pros and cons to it. You can continue to make a game that tries to push for better communication and push for requiring these skills before enjoying your game. Right now, I would say from like from a perception standpoint, like a market or optic standpoint, that's going against the current. The current now is individual accolades and individual satisfaction may lead and contribute to group and community togetherness, not the other way around. Selecting to enforce cooperative play and competitiveness is what the internet is not well equipped for at the moment, right? If you're advertising things, it's targeted to the individual. When you use the internet, it is your internet. That's what it's normalized. It's your internet experience, not a group's internet experience. The group's internet experience is serendipitously created by multiple individuals having the same interest. Neverwinter is built on the idea that everyone is capable of having the same interest before they commit to something. And that is tough. Not undoable. So if they double down on that, all the power to them. I think that's pretty interesting. It's a great social experiment. World of Warcraft technically doesn't have that, and Final Fantasy 14 doesn't have that. Why is that? It's subscription based. They're already obligated. And for the record, Blizzard is not a stranger to horizontal game development. You know, there's a recent edition of housing, which was mentioned last week. Final Fantasy 14 has many of the horizontal progression systems in its design. Neverwinter has none of those. The closest thing I would say is probably Workshop, and that is still competitively oriented because it's supply and gains oriented, not legacy sentimental built. Fashion is behind gated content. For example, you might be thinking like, wait, how is fashion behind gated content? Most of the fashion achievement things are associated with achieving things that are relative in a group content. Like even Slaughterhouse required something that requires more than one person, right? The stuff that doesn't, like today, Winterfest has like a trail. It's immediately great, at least in my opinion. Like a trail, like illusions are hidden, right? The whole idea of fashion, like are hidden behind like gated PvE content. I think that if the goal is to make it very difficult to appreciate Neverwinter because they are out of touch with the trending requirements of arguably the loneliest generation of the internet, for better or for worse, I think there are lots of pros that I can highlight about the current generation or the biggest target audience, right? As well as the cons. This is definitely one of them. Expecting competitive PvE play by merit is so different from making someone comfortable in the individual merits they have in order to come across other people with similar merits. That's allowing that's, in my opinion, a more organic way of looking at growing your community than the other way around. So, really going to be I'm genuinely curious how they're going to go about that. I really have no ideas other than citing examples that are obvious. Like, they're obvious to me, but possibly not obvious to others who have different visions, right? I think competitive PvE is a later stage of maintaining a live service model. You maintain the live service model and understand that players are excited because they have things they can do that aren't gated by their dependency on other people. and then giving them the opportunity to participate in that can offer transformative emergence. It does come at a risk. If your designs are so individually oriented, players might not be incentivized or encouraged to interact with each other in the first place. And that's fair. Right now, I think the center stage is pretty obvious. There's a constant de-incentivizing of what the campaign does. Most of the TLC involves the campaign, right? Like, and trials and dungeons are not exciting not as exciting, largely because there's always that a concern for, well, is it going to be gatekept? Well, this trial was entirely gatekept. The last trial was the gatekept. Like, it's very difficult to not see trials as gatekeeping problems, and not necessarily a bad or a good thing. I think the gatekeeping makes it very competitive, right? That's good. That's what they achieved what they want. And what I'm stating are the compromises. More Masters trials, more Dungeons trials mean less and less potential growth for the game, but higher and higher retention of all the players that still exist. So on the one hand, constantly emphasizing competitive gatekept PvE content will help the game consistently mitigate players from leaving, the existing players from leaving. It will then trade off for constantly being the obstacle for players who want to start the game, or even, in my opinion, come back to the game. For the gamers that they attract are those who want nostalgia, the ones that they want to return to the same things that they had, which is very good in this. If you want an experience like 7 years ago, it's not really that much different from that experience. So if you really want that, like that great good old coffee, or that when you vacation 7 years ago and you're visiting a country again and it's still keeping the tradition alive, and you still have that great piece of coffee, or cup of coffee, Neverwinter is pretty solid at that. It's probably its main draw. So in a way, I want to say that whatever they're doing is good if that's what they want. If that's what that's definitely what the player base wants. I think the vast majority of the existing player base like the idea of what they're doing. That's probably also going to be the feedback that they're going to get. If they continue to do a little bit tweaking here and there, and constantly a little bit of tweaking while nudging everyone to a better and better position of what they realize and pandering to them, the game will lose less and less players over time. It won't gain players. It will rarely ever gain new players, but it will certainly not lose players at an increasing rate. And I think that's kind of the state of Neverwinter at the moment. I will continue playing the game, not for the reasons that other players like. I have no problems saying that, hey guys, you're probably never going to see me play a Soul Harvest Advance or Masters or any future Master content on Neverwinter Online, because it requires access to the gated community, and I can't in a way that would mean to uproot my entire life. So alternatively, I would just go and play games that actually have communities during this time frame, right? I log on to P5X and I'm like, yes, people play Persona. Persona might as well exceed D&D for me personally, because it's more inclusive right now than as a vehicle, as a representation of a live service model that represent. Neverwinter is not one of those. Like D&D, if someone would say, oh, but that's not in the spirit of D&D. It's like, I know. And in fact, when Neverwinter was released, one of the biggest criticism is it doesn't reflect D&D. in both mechanics and a lot of times communal aspects of D&D. So D&D is one of those things, like it's kind of what made D&D really big. It's communal. Like you have weak players and strong players, but because of the nature of its campaign and experiences, they're catering to all of the players, not just the elite and hardcore. That's what made D&D incredibly awesome. It bends over backwards to make the players of the game feel like they belong in an environment. The structure of a traditional MMORPG that people pine for, especially that kid that keeps telling me that I'm missing out, or I want that. I don't want that. I want, like, if you really want to go back to nostalgia, then it's humorous because D&D is one of those like paper and pencil philosophies that it was meant to cater to everyone, not the elites or the most skilled. In fact, people who aren't focused on skilled mechanics and whatnot, they thrive on creativity and emergence. And then that goes back to my comment about how people did the Metal Gear Solid, like the Solid Snake method on where wind meets. I think that's hilarious. That's something that I'm missing in Neverwinter. You don't have those anymore. Actually, a lot of times those come in the form of exploits, right? And then exploits lead into name calling and hearsay because this game is built on elitism. It's built on competitive PvE, where if someone has an unfair advantage or they discover a bug or something like that, they have to be punished in the sense that you should not be creative about these things. And that kind of feeds into how Neverwinter feels a lot of times. You do something, you say something, and say, well, you're wrong, because the majority of people here would agree with me because I've been here longer. That type of mentality. Me as in the figurative me, because I'm not part of the Neverwinter community. It's been a very long time since I've really been considered to be part of the Neverwinter community. I don't share its philosophies. It's obviously pretty... I hope it's kind of obvious here that I like Neverwinter for the things that I don't think people generally like about Neverwinter. And what I mean by like, I mean spend most of their time thinking about. They're spending most of the time thinking about loot, performance, balance checks, how accessible the rewards are. I'm looking forward to what's the next story. Do they still hire the same actors? Are they going to make more than one zone for the next campaign? Are they gonna eviscerate and remove all the time they spend on trials, master trials and advanced trials, and make one thing that anyone can play because it's the evolution of the thing? Like imagine, here's a hot take. Imagine the quote-unquote dungeon, or the solo dungeon, or the 3-player dungeon, something smaller, changing over time of the campaign. So like, as opposed to trying to create 3 separate tuning of the same thing, you can tune the things as a progression of the campaign. So like, the dungeon will change as milestones are hit. Like the centerpiece that is being iterated on changes in difficulty and accessibility as the milestone is developing for a solo-centric experience. And then in the end, that adds up to the mechanical depth of the thing that they're trying to tweak over and over again, right? It's to the point where the vast majority of players that has trials, they already experienced it too. The current community, they go into the preview shard and play all of these things, and then immediately on the first day they jumpstart it and they play whatever the trial or dungeon at day 1. And that thing has no maturity. It has no iterations, no changes.
outside of tweaking based on the community that already exists that play for it. So not quite your standing pleasure of live service models. Like every 2 weeks, like in another 2.5 weeks, I'm looking forward to the next P5X update. It's going to be the completion of the 3rd palace, more banners thrown at me, and there are going to be players who's going to throw money at it, because every time something new happens, it's going to have value despite it being gambling. Like, we talked about gotchaing, FOMO and all that. You have to do that responsibly, and you understand that the great draw of it is it's horizontal. Like, the more you spend, not necessarily in money, the more livelier and more connected, more accessibility that you have. This game doesn't do that. When the next module rolls around, it will be about the next module. The previous module, to heck with that. Right? In fact, for me, if the next module introduces a dungeon, which they guaranteed, because they're like, oh, we were so excited to bring 2 trials, I think that was pretty foolish, in my opinion, however excited you were about it. And then they say they're gonna go back to normal. No, 2 dungeons. 2 dungeons is when you go back to normal. Like, the next 2 modules are 2 dungeons, not 1 dungeon and then going back to trials again. I think that whoever is making that decision so far ahead, I would disagree with that perception, considering the feedback you may have gotten. I might be talking way out of line, and this second trial somehow tells the developer, like, oh, it's a smashing success, everyone's playing, like, it's so much better than doing dungeon trials and dungeons on alternative strategies. Kind of like when Black Ops 7 was released, and the last game they released was Black Ops 6. Yeah, that went really well. I mean, I might be cherry picking, I suppose, because new patterns and trends are forming right now. We'll see. I think it's fun to look forward to the half modules, because the last module was experimental. And obviously, it tells me a lot about who's experimenting. Last module, at least it was interesting. I read about it. I didn't participate in it because it didn't cater to me. But it was super interesting that they decided to try something, right? They tried the PvE VP sort of thing. It's like a detached PvE VP thing. That's new and exciting, because extraction shooters prove that it's great. You can pull it off. I mean, we'll have to see how Marathon does, because Marathon is also, I believe, it's another extraction shooter. There are more extraction shooters, by the way. It's kind of like the new trend, right? I'm looking forward to Osiris. Osiris is the Expanse based, and it kind of looks like an extraction shooter. Not that there's enough details, but I might be getting my feet wet in extraction shooters, because I genuinely believe they can achieve something at the moment where individuals are encouraged, because they are happy and they want to play a game, to share the game, to have cooperative tendencies. This game does not, honestly. Like, actually, a lot of times it's how little you can play the game, like how little you want to spend farming. And then most of the comments that people make is how long you have spent farming, and how long it's doing the same thing, of which you're kind of doing it alone, which alone, the vast majority of game time, in my opinion, right now, is actually because of their currency bottleneck. It would be more competitive, honestly, than the trials, like in the dungeons. I suppose my focus is elsewhere, right? Like, all right, well, we have these 2 goobers here. That would be kind of cool if this was a more normal thing. Like, if there's any nostalgia, which is not nostalgia, by the way, I actually think humans love this. Like, this thing is why live service games and MMORPGs used to be one of the great social hubs. It's no longer that anymore. You know, this thing. These things. I don't think they exist anymore. At least in Neverwinter Online. So I am, like, I get drawn by other games. Other games really captivates this moment. Like, if you have a person who's incredibly happy playing a game, they themselves will then be able to exude and spread that enthusiasm to others. I think that is the current like state of things. It wasn't always this way. I don't think it was always this way. I think back in the day, you know, in the nostalgia days, accolades, merits, hard work kind of sort of situation, like group play brings solidarity, and then that creates a word of mouth. People, in my opinion, now who play video games, especially live service games, are individual based. So the more content and happy they are, the more likely word of mouth travels and creates a more community event. Forcing people to create their merits as a group fail far more than they succeed at the moment. This could all change. But for now, that's at least what I think. Single player experiences are the dominating trend. Living in the past would suggest that multiplayer experiences is dominating, and that requires multiplayer games require multiplayer experiences in order to maintain their staying power. I think that is the thing of the past for now. It can come back in the future. Right now, there's a pushback, and I think there are far more influential people who spend more time reading game journalism, like they do game journalism and statistics and data mining, that single player experiences are making a comeback. The demand for single player experiences are making a comeback. It is with great single player experiences, in my opinion, that creates and lead to people wanting to form a community. So opposite of what that guy said, that I'm pining for multiplayer experience or the golden age of trying to competitively play together and doing hard things and valuing our time. The valuation of time is exactly the consequence of that guy's egotistical and ethnocentric remark. He thinks that everyone thinks like him, and I don't. The internet tends to have people who are contrarians than they do collectively trying to relate to each other. The relation comes from common interest. It will be very interesting to reflect upon this in the next module and the module after that. So for now, that's what I had. That's what I prepared for today. I'll try to prepare another, like a couple more current events, like gaming stories and stuff for next week, and then try to build a narrative that relates to Neverwinter. I think this is a great way to end these segments, since ultimately there's really little to show for myself, for my end, because I like the campaigning. I enjoy the live service part. The dungeons and the trials are not the live service part. It's the old system where subscription-based things would be viable. So they charged for dungeons and trials, and they made lots of good ones, you know, great ones around them. It would still work, in my opinion. World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV still does that. Destiny 2 kinda still does that, I think. Although Destiny 2 is doing the whole like grandfathering, or like what you call it, what is that, sunsetting, you know. Neverwinter did sunset most of its content too, like the earlier zones, they're being repurposed, so they sunset the zones and then repurpose them. So Neverwinter is still also guilty of sunsetting. sunsetting whatever things they have and then repurposing them. That's vertical repurposing, right? Recently Sega has as well. They sunset like old versions of Yakuza and then releasing a new version and then marketing it. It's inherently very negative. Vertical progression in every sense of the form when it comes to valuation of time or money, they're both valuable things, is inherently not favorable at the moment. So this would be a great example. Their design is inherently not a live service game. The main draw is the part that doesn't make it a live service. Meeting expectations, right? You spend a lot of time doing a master's trials, and then when the next dungeon comes around, you're going to spend a lot of time doing the master dungeons. And if you can do the master dungeons, there's a chance whatever you did in the master trials is irrelevant now because it's depicted in the value of your gear and your item level. So then every single module, the developer and the publisher is competing with itself. It's constantly competing with its own content. So in order to make its content less valuable, they defeat the value of everything that comes before it in order to make it new and fresh again by upping it. So you're constantly running in a treadmill without gaining any legacy over and over again. And that is not how living works, right? If you're thinking about live service, when you eat that bowl of cereal, you'll still at least remember what cereals you have eaten before and tried before. The live part of live service is that you build legacy. And that's what makes it really hard to quit your game. And it also allows a person to take pride. And if they're having fun, recruit other people to your game. And then the cycle continues. But this game is more like, well, I can definitely tell you it's easy to pick up. Because once you pick it up, there's a chance you're going to quit, knowing that whatever you do now is going to be less and less valuable later. Right? So it's easy to pick up, and it's also easy to quit. It's definitely easier to quit than to pick up at the moment. Right? Based on the design. And that's the story for today. Hopefully I have a few more interesting news, game-related news for the next couple. All right, guys, that's a wrap for today, the end of 6th week. Business as usual. The next 4 weeks will be very similar because the campaign doesn't change in the last 4. Maybe I'll read some PE, like Discord content or announcements and talk about those things. They are usually the inspiration for a lot of this. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. I guess play responsibly, go out there, interact with people, interact with people playing video games, I suppose. That's often a great place to break some ice. So see you guys next time. Take care. Bye now.